Proceed.
Welcome to another edition of Dallas Social Distancing Toastmasters. I want to go over just a few things before we get started and move into the actual meeting portion of this evening. And the first thing is to show you where our agenda is. So the agenda for the evening is located on our website, and that is DallasSocialToastmasters.com. And you can see here under the members section toward the right-hand side, you can see something that says current agenda. If you click on that, that's going to open up the current agenda for this evening. And so you can pull that up from there. You'll see the theme for this evening is Grow Yourself. Please note that first member who's listed under duty holders is Lee King. He's our timer. So please be sure that you have him. If you're speaking, make sure that you have him in your view, whether you pin him to the screen or whether you have him just in your view somewhere while you're speaking. And that's for the speakers, for the table topic speakers, and also for the evaluators. So please keep that in mind as we move along through the meeting. As Dagan mentioned, please try to keep yourself on mute if you are not up to speak. If you are speaking, if you're a duty holder and you have like an out counter, you're going to click, or if you're a posture monitor, you're going to ding. You're welcome to keep yourself off mute during the meeting, but just make sure that you're quiet. If you find some noises that are being distracting behind you or around you, then go ahead and put yourself on mute and just make sure that you notate as you would normally for your report at the end of the meeting. So at this point, we don't have any guests, so I'm going to skip over our president with no ill feelings there. At least I hope not on his end. And at this point, I'm not sure if I'm forgetting anything, but at this point, I'm going to move over to, or hand the meeting over to our Toastmaster for the evening, and that is Mr. Dagan Newland. Please help me to welcome Dagan Newland.
All right, thank you. Like Rob said, welcome to another meeting of Dallas Distancing Social Toastmasters. And my theme was Grow Yourself. But before I get into that, I do want to mention is Suicide Awareness Month. So if you ever feel down or going down that rabbit hole, please make sure you reach out to somebody, because there's always a loved one out there that's willing to talk to you about things. And also, if you ever notice somebody that's going down the rabbit hole, getting kind of, away from you and stuff like that, please reach out to them, because you don't know what they're going through, and you could help them out immensely if you do that. So before I actually get into my theme, I want to go to the duty holders. So the duty holders tonight, the first one is we timer, who is also performing vote counting. So Lee, can you go over both your roles tonight as timer and vote counter, please?
Yes. As your timer for this evening, I'll be timing the various portions of the meeting, including prepared speech, table topics, as well as evaluation. Throughout the meeting, as people meet their minimum qualifying time, they will see the green card. When they are halfway through their time, they will receive the yellow card. And then finally, when their time has exhausted, they will receive the red card. I will continue to hold the red card until they stop speaking. However, if they go 30 seconds beyond the red card, they will not qualify for any awards. The table topics section of the meeting, speakers must speak a minimum of 1 minute and go no more than 2 minutes. For the for evaluations, it's 2 minutes to 3 minutes, with qualifying at 1:30 and disqualifying at 2:31. And then I will be informed as we go through the meeting on the different prepared speeches and those times. I'm also the vote counter. Throughout the meeting, you'll be asked to submit a private chat to me indicating who you felt like did the best job with speaking, evaluating, table topics, and finally the big three. I will then give a report of that at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lee. Our next duty holder tonight is going to be our Pastor Bell. That's Rob Giles. Can you give us your role, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. As the posture monitor, I'll be looking for any distracting posture, any gestures that might be positive and impactful during your speaking. I will go ahead and ding you when I see something that might be distracting or not part of your speech. So please be aware of those things. When you hear that ding, note that you might have done something like scratch your head, you might have played with your clothes a little bit or something along those lines. Perhaps you're slouching. If I see that while you're speaking, then that's something that I will go ahead and ding you on. I'll also create a report that I will give at the end of the meeting when the general evaluator calls upon me. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rob. Next duty holder is all counter, which I'm performing. So as all counter, I'll be looking for those crutch words like us, ahs, and so's, and you knows, and pregnant pauses and things like that are distracting from your speech. I do not have any kind of device to notify you that, but I will keep track of those throughout the speakers and throughout the meeting as a whole, and I'll make my report when called upon by the general evaluator. So back to me. All right. Our next duty holder is going to be our grammarian, who is John Vessel. So John Vessel, can you please explain your role?
All right, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. The role of the grammarian is to listen to people's speeches tonight and look for good uses of the English language, bad uses of the English language, interesting subject matter for as far as the way you speak and the phrasing you use. And the other part is to introduce the word of the day, and the word of today is tenacious. It's an adjective. It means not easily dispelled or discouraged. I held on tenaciously to that rope so I wouldn't fall off the cliff. So I'll do all that and I will listen. Okay, and tenacious you must use in the table topics in order to qualify. And all that I will do and listen and give a report at the end of the meeting when I call upon myself to give that report. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, John. So when I talk about grow yourself, we always, well, me personally, you always want to think about, you always want to learn things. But if you're not in the process of learning things, you're kind of being stagnant at where you are. So we always want to be in the process of bettering ourselves, whether that's, through learning something new or, make a new hobby or, things like that. So like in my respect, obviously a lot of y'all know that I recently started a YouTube channel talking about, beard product reviews, beard health, and tips and tricks and things like that. And I also recently combined my other, I had another YouTube channel where I talked about, lying and theft and things like that, where I actually combine them now. So in the process of me doing this, I guess it could be actually kind of a hobby, I guess you could say, by doing this. And, I've always been kind of a reserved person. So me doing this has actually helped me grow, me personally, and actually become less reserved and kind of more outgoing, because I'm putting myself out there for people to see me. And, hopefully, people subscribe and want to listen to the information that I'm giving them and giving them reviews on stuff. And hopefully, they take my recommendations about how, these products, work for me. So it's been kind of an uphill journey through this whole process. When I started the channel, I only had a couple of friends that subscribed to me. And now, a couple months later, I have I just looked a while ago, I have 227 subscribers in a couple of months. So I think I'm actually doing pretty good. So that you know, that kind of lifts me up. So I'm just kind of enjoying this, you know. So this is you always want to grow yourself, whether, you know, like I said, as a hobby, learning something. We always want to try to better ourselves. I also have a saying here, actually a couple of things I want to mention throughout this meeting. And one is that you have been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens. That was by Lewis Hay. So I thought that was kind of appropriate for this topic. And of course, this is kind of, you know, doing the YouTube thing is kind of a creative, fun thing for me too, because you have to edit your videos and creativity and make thumbnails and things like that. So, you know, creativity is intelligence having fun. That was by Albert Einstein. All right, so before we get more to the topic, I will move on to our prepared speeches tonight. And our first speaker is going to be Rob, and evaluating him is going to be Tanya Howard. So Tanya, can you explain how you can be evaluated tonight?
Yes. Tonight, Rob will be doing a speech that is using presentation software. His speech is 7 to 9 minutes, and his objective is to introduce or review a basic presentation software and to demonstrate his understanding of how to use the software and in doing a speech regarding how to implement. Is that not the right one? You're looking at me like that's not right, Rob. That's what you sent me. I can't hear you.
No, I don't think that that's the objective of the speech. I think that's the objective of the project. But we'll run with it anyway.
Are you using a presentation?
I'm using presentation software. Yes. It's okay.
Okay. And then, all right. And then I'm just going to be, of course, checking this, that you're doing all of your great speaking skills and strategies as well. I don't know the title of the speech though.
It should be listed on the evaluation form. It's what just happened.
Okay. It's blank.
Really?
What just
You mean the evaluator is blank or the title is blank? Maybe I sent you
the
wrong
title is blank. It's
one.
okay.
I thought I just
What
had
just happened?
Yes, what just happened?
What just happened, Rob?
All right, so remember, remember his speech is 7 to 9 minutes. So what just happened? Rob Giles, what just happened?
For 3 weeks, I anguished, I worried, I tried to absorb everything that I could from anybody that I saw up on stage. I tried to take the good stuff and incorporate it in what I was about to give, my first speech, my icebreaker. I took the bad stuff and I thought, I can't do this stuff. I gotta make sure that I get rid of this stuff. So I was about to start my first speech, but I was incredibly nervous. It was my icebreaker. Fellow leaders, fellow speakers, do you recall a time when you were about to do something that you were unsure of? Perhaps something for the first time, perhaps that first speech. The feedback and recognition from that speech. When that last statement came, when that last sentence came from my icebreaker speech, I held my breath. And then I saw people rise. And I heard the applause. And I started breathing again. In accomplishment, I thought, what just happened? That is the power of recognition. Recognition is something that can be incredibly impactful on our lives. It can be something that is long lasting. If you don't have the recognition, you could be missing out on incredible opportunities. But if you have powerful and positive feedback, it can last a lifetime. And that is the power of recognition. What does recognition make up from, or what is made up of recognition? Some of the things that I thought of when I was going through this was, one, it can help to build what I would say is a foundation. It's something that we can build upon, something we can start from that will help carry us through. It can help with perseverance, help us to get through some difficult times and to keep moving on. It can help to be encouragement for others who are witnessing what's going on. That is the power of recognition. That is something that we all can gain from. Building a foundation, that recognition that can do that can be something in our Toastmasters meetings that is as simple as recognizing friends or guests when they come to a meeting. Something that they can take and they can build upon. When we greet them, when we let them know that, hey, we recognize you. Hi, so glad that you were able to come and check us out. Those are the things that can help to build a foundation upon which those people can grow. That is something that we can look back on once the people have achieved or reached those goals, those final goals. You can look back and think, that is the foundation. That very first day that I came. But it also invades our personal life. And it can be something very, very simple as well. It can be a first impression. Perhaps that person, that special person in your life, maybe a first love or the love of your life. That first impression is important. And if you recall that person's name or you say hello, those are forms of recognition. And those are the things that might actually be why we seem to remember some of our first meetings with some of those very important people in our lives. But recognition can also help to persevere. Once we're going along our path, our journey, sometimes as Toastmasters, we can hit a wall. We might find ourselves struggling. We might feel like we're not getting anywhere. We pretty much have hit a plateau. But it's the little things, the small accomplishments, as well as some of the more powerful accomplishments and awards that can help to push us through, help to push other people through. Getting a recognition from your general evaluator that you just gave an on-counter report that was both detailed and succinct. Or perhaps it's winning the ribbon for the best speech at a meeting, or getting a certificate for completing your path. These are the things in Toastmasters that we yearn for, probably even subconsciously, maybe not even outwardly. But it also touches, like I said before, on our personal life. When we're suffering, we all go through times where we have depression, despair, failure. And there are a lot of things that we can do to try to help and try to overcome those things for those people around us. When we see that happening to somebody, we might not have the ability, or maybe not even the wherewithal to overcome or help them overcome the entire thing, but we can help them to perhaps continue to move on and push on. And we can do that by doing simple things, like laughing at their jokes, like telling a family member that you love them. These are the little things that are very important. And they're extremely important in Toastmasters because recognition of what we achieve can help us and it can help others. It can be encouragement for others around us. In our personal life, it can be something that provides happiness, experiences that we can cherish. Again, something as simple as hearing somebody tell you that they love you. Something that can be just watching either your sister, your brother, a friend, someone you look up to, winning an award, getting a promotion. It brings pride, it brings joy, happiness to us. And that's the benefit that those around us that see those recognitions get. But it also is encouraging because perhaps we want to grab some of those recognitions ourselves. It can help to push us to get those recognitions or similar types of recognitions in our lives. In Toastmasters, we can be inspired, motivated, even prideful. Whether it's somebody giving a speech and getting a round of applause or winning the best speaker. It could be something like a speaker motivating somebody else when they receive an award that, hey, I'm going to work harder, do better on my next speech, and I'm going to get that same applause. I'm going to get that same goal. And as the audience, as the people around watching, it can be very, very much a moment of pride that perhaps our club helped for that person to reach those plateaus or those accolades, those achievements. Those are the things that I look forward to. Now, sometimes we may forget that we can also actually give ourselves some accolades. We can maybe give ourselves some silent but humble applause when we find that we've done something great. But when we are doing that, we can look into ourselves and see everything that's going on around us as well. When I had the standing applause for my icebreaker speech, it propelled me to give that same speech again, a little bit tweaked, at the Metro Division contest years later. Recognition can last and last. It can be something that we can hold on to, that we can look to. For me, every day, I remember that. And it is something that I cherish each of those days. Don't discount the power of recognition. Stop and recognize. It truly is the only way that you will really know what just happened. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you, Rob. Give me a round of applause for Rob. So, all right. So, and also when you're growing yourself, you gotta encourage. Like when Rob speaks, talk about encouragement there. You gotta encourage yourself when you're trying to grow yourself, because sometimes you may start a project and you may get a little discouraged how it's going. So, really, if you believe you can, you're halfway there. And that was by Theodore Roosevelt. So you gotta stay encouraged and keep yourself encouraged. All right, we'll move to our next speaker, who is Mark Sims. And his title is He Was a Nice Guy, and his evaluator is Karen Lee. So Karen, can you explain how you're gonna evaluate Mark Sims, please?
Okay.
you turned your video off.
His project is, he was a nice guy, and the purpose of the project is for him to practice skills needed to connect with an unfamiliar audience. And he's completing this project and practicing skills needed to connect with an unfamiliar audience. And then he presents a topic that is new or unfamiliar to his club members. His time is 5 to 7 minutes. Speech was, he was a nice guy.
All right, thank you, Karen. So let's welcome Mark Sims with He Was a Nice Guy. Mark Sims, he was a nice guy.
Thank you. Think about what you want people to say about you when you're gone. And I've heard once a recommendation that if you were trying to get to know someone, didn't know them well, to bring up something like that. What would they want said at their eulogy, or what would they want to say about themselves in their obituary? Because it's a good thought-provoking question. I personally have always liked the eulogy of Robert Kennedy that was delivered by his younger brother. It went on for a while, but one excerpt was, "My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life, but to be simply remembered as a good and decent man." And it goes on from there, but those words, a good and decent man, resonated with me. I really don't think we get to hear what people say when we're gone. I mean, if one's belief is that there is no afterlife, then you don't hear. And in my case, I do believe in an afterlife, but I don't think that we have a TV set from that point, from that space into what's going on in the world. But if you think about the people you know, your relatives, your close friends, your coworkers, you can kind of figure out what they might say or what you hope they would say. Now, their perspectives may vary, I mean, from role to role, because we're all different things, different people. And the same people might have public and private thoughts that they share. For example, some of my relatives might say about me that Mark was a hard worker. He really paid attention to his career. They might also say Mark was there for his family. Now, more cynically, they might think, yeah, Mark worked pretty hard at staying on a government payroll for an entire career. Must be nice. Or they might think, yeah, he was there at every family event. He was always the first one in line when it came time to eat. Hopefully there'd be plenty of good memories, but there would probably be some pros and cons. Now, think about your coworkers, because they know you. They really know you. I mean, no rose-colored glasses, no illusions. They get you. And my boss, for example, he can be somewhat of an aloof, sometimes a stern man. He might blink back unexpected tears and think, Mark could write a memo like no one I've ever seen. Well, that's something. Another coworker might think, what am I even doing here at this funeral? One time I asked that guy for some help on a project, and he gave some lame excuse, like he had to go to a Toastmasters meeting, whatever that is, jerk. And the list goes on. The preacher at my church might solemnly assure the crowd that Mark was a man of devout faith. He might privately think, yeah, I saw the dude in church most of the time. He sat in the same place. Sometimes he looked bored, and we had to pull teeth to get $10 out of him for the building fund, but okay, he was all right. Other people that we don't know as well, like might have different perspectives. Think about your favorite restaurant and the wait staff there. If they somehow learned you had gone, they might think, oh, Mr. 10% tip guy is dead. Okay, well, good riddance. So you get the idea. But this unusual way of thinking may be a way for us to prioritize our lives going forward. Think about your family. And in my family, most of the time we would get together around Christmas. And for years when we would break up the get together, everyone would assure each other, we would almost pinky swear that we would get together during the year, and we never would. We just gave up even saying that. But make that effort to stay in contact more frequently with your relatives. Tell them you're doing that because they are important to you. Think of your friends. I mean, we all enjoy time with friends, the emails, the texts, going out doing fun things. Take time to do things with your friends that aren't fun. For example, a few years ago, a friend asked me and a few others to help her move. It was going to be on a Saturday morning, and a hot August Saturday morning at that. I dreaded it for weeks in advance, and I hated it the day of, but it was something that she really needed. And do things like that. If a friend needs help, make that effort to do something, not just the fun stuff, but the hard stuff. Tell them because they are important to you. Think of your job. If you find yourself maybe frustrated with dealing with small issues, minutiae, paperwork, emails, go to your boss. Tell him or her you want to do something more substantive that makes more of a lasting impact. Because the same boss that might not want to hear about your request for a raise or a request for a promotion, I think would still be impressed by you saying, I want to help us out. I want to do something that leaves a legacy. And you can tell them you're doing that because that's important to you. And think about your religious faith, if that's who you are, or if not, then something equivalent, what you do believe in, and go beyond simply stating your faith and your beliefs to more sacrificial, more challenging activities to live that faith, because that's important to the world you live in. So remember that when your time comes, yeah, you want people to think he was a nice guy. You also want people to remember that you were someone that cared about others, and someone that tried to make a difference. Mr. Toastmaster.
I got to unmute myself. So remember, when you part of the process when you try to grow yourself is that sometimes, depending on what it is, whether you're trying to learn something new, start a new project, something, you could have a plan. You need to have a plan on how you're going to do it. But sometimes, the plan doesn't work out right. So, don't be discouraged by that. If the plan doesn't work, change the plan, but never the goal. And also, you also want to try to, achieve your goal. So it's important achieving your goal. So I'm going to leave you with this one quote. What you get by achieving your goal is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. By Zig Ziglar. So I thought that was a really good quote for this. And remember, I'm going to leave you with this before you move on to our next section, is that, when you're growing yourself, and you think about thank you, Rob. Before I do that, let's ask for a timer's report. Did everybody qualify on time? I know.
Mark Sims qualified at 6 minutes, 45 seconds. Rob disqualified at 10 minutes, 33 seconds.
Wow. Yeah, I knew you disqualified. I thought I read it for a while, but all right. So we don't have to vote for the best speaker, but please do leave comments for our speakers if you have any comments for them in the private chat directly to them. All right. Before we move on to table topics, I have to remind you that please think about some way to grow yourself. Start something new, learn something new, but remember, don't wait. The time will never be just right. So I'll leave you with that. And now we'll move on to our table topic section of the meeting with Mark Schroeder.
Thank you, Dagan. All right, as Dagan mentioned, this is going to be table topics. I have prepared a set of questions, and they are very loosely based on the concept of grow yourself, taking very liberal usage of what those words mean. Your time, of course, 1 to 2 minutes. You have to reach at least 1 minute. You will get the green at 1, at 1.5, you'll get the yellow. At 2, you will get the red, and you will have until 2 minutes and 30 seconds to finish up. You are required to use the word of the day in order to be eligible for one of the ribbons, as well as meet your timing goal. And of course, be sure to make sure that Lee King is visible because he's our timer tonight. Lee, there's a very good chance that you are going to get one of the questions. I will be your timer. And so you don't have to worry about that. I will take care of that, and remember to do that. In the same vein and the same general theme that we had for the meeting of grow yourself, one of the things that I got a chance to do this week for 3 days, it started, I guess, about maybe 3 weeks ago when we got a chance to do some training, or we got training offered to us. So we basically got a chance to say, yes, I'm interested in that or not. And they basically gave us a set of choices to look through. I chose a class that was a Docker class, which is, a technical class, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week. So that was really good. What was interesting was at the end of the class, I stayed around just a little longer, even though it was still virtual and on Zoom. We waited until everybody else was pretty much off of the conference. And I gave him some feedback on how I felt the class had gone. Very much, if you will, a train the trainer, and quite frankly, Toastmaster style points for how he had done. What he did well, and our usual 60%, what did you do well? What could you do a little bit better? And what were the best things that I got out of the training, or the best ways that you worked presenting? And it's interesting because I've done that multiple times. I've probably been in 3 or 4 classes where I have, at the end, had a Toastmasters discussion with our trainer just to give them feedback. So the question is basically, have you ever done a train the trainer type of discussion when you've been in training and given your own trainer feedback as to their performance? And this question is going to go out to Lee King. Lee, just 1 moment, let me get everything set. You may go.
I've actually had that opportunity a couple of times. Once at work, for one of the hospitals we worked at, we all had to give an evaluation for our supervisor. And then also in Toastmasters had that opportunity. And I know some people really felt very nervous about that. Others did not. But I think that having the opportunity to train the trainer, give an evaluation to the person that evaluates you, also makes them a more tenacious person because it pushes them to grow. And so I feel like it's a great tool that can be used. It's just important that when you're doing it, obviously you are evaluating them fairly, just as you would anybody else. In summary, I have had that opportunity a couple of times. I find that it is a very good tool, and I hope that others of you will also have that opportunity. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Lee. And just real briefly, so that we get a record of it, you obviously did meet your time. All right. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. This particular time was different because all the other ones had been in person. Well, it's not quite true. I think there was one other that was not in person, but most of them had been in-person training. I'd had a class which was a presentation skills class, effectively, and it was even videotaped. I had another one which was still kind of related to presentation skills, but it was also personality a little bit. That was in person. So I have found it very interesting and fun to give that kind of feedback when I get a chance. Next question. This is, again, pushing the limits of grow yourself. We have all seen and heard the story of the $6 million man. Injury, and we can rebuild you. We can make you better, faster, stronger. Well, I don't know whether $6 million will do it anymore. And in this particular case, the person that is going to get rebuilt isn't a man. But Tanya, what parts have they rebuilt on you, and how do you use them?
Well, if I had an opportunity to rebuild some of my parts, I would begin with the parts that are aching me today. I believe that I might be developing carpal tunnel, and I'm having a hard time with holding things, and it's just achy. My wrist, it started with the left and then it moved to the right. I don't know if it's psychosomatic now and I'm just making myself hurt more, but I would begin with the parts that are already maybe getting worn out so that I could be more tenacious and really get going and keeping up with all the things. Maybe I would take up tennis and weightlifting and all those things that now might give me a little bit hesitation. But I would start with fixing some of the things that are starting to hurt as I get older and age a little bit. My dad tells me, welcome to the club. And people are saying, this is normal. And when I went to the clinic, I thought, my gosh, I think I broke something. And the primary care doctor gave me arthritis medication. And I'm like, really? Arthritis medication? Is that what I'm looking forward to now? But I would start by just fixing those things that are already giving me a little twinge and a pain right now. And that would make me feel like the $6 million woman. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I feel you. I have, at this point, at least 2 ruptured discs in different parts of my back, and they keep referring to needing a complete spinal replacement surgery. One of the ones that they are not quite up to doing yet. All right, next question. Let's see. I had a contact from one of our previous members today. She has not been in the club for quite a while, but a lot of people will recognize the name when I say it's Tiffany Curtis or Tiffany Swulius. She had to go up against the board again today to try to negotiate down the tax rate on her house, or at least a taxable assessment on her house. She did that successfully years ago while she was in Toastmasters, and she was unsuccessful at doing it today. And she said she said, maybe I need to come back to the STM. And she did not feel that she had the same confidence. So the question that I'm going to ask is, you gain skills and confidence by doing activities like Toastmasters, but you can lose them if you don't continue practicing them. Have you ever lost skills by not using them? And how often do you have to practice skills in order to retain them? This question is going to go to Kim Crandall. And by the way, Kim, if you had trouble hearing any of that, I've put the question in the chat for you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for that question. I think as long as we don't continue with our Toastmaster skills, we digress. How do we digress? I think in 2 ways. First of all, we're not as confident and our skills aren't as sharp. Secondly, I think we have to be tenacious in keeping up our skills. I would think that anyone that has had any time away from Toastmasters will say the same thing. It may not be quite as obvious, it may not be quite as apparent, but in small ways even, yes, there are small deficits. And I think, as I said before, you have to be tenacious in keeping those skills sharp. And I think that's what most people are finding even after several meetings, you come back and it's like, you know, I really missed that. And I feel like I have slipped a little bit. And as part of my game plan is I continue Toastmasters because I want to continue growing personally and professionally, and I want to have those skills and continue building those skills. I think it's important also to reflect on positively also what have you gained over the last short period of time or since you have started Toastmasters. I think everyone will agree that they can see and monitor how well they've been able to progress. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, I think I agree with you entirely. It is so easy to regress on things if you're not diligent at continuing to practice them. I find that I do tend to practice the Toastmaster stuff even outside of Toastmasters, but then again, I've never been away from it long enough to fall out of, have it fall out of me. So I suspect if I stayed away long enough, it would probably disappear as well for me. I'll ask at least one more. We'll see how we go. The subject of several movies has been on growing yourself, call it chemically. I'm thinking of some sort of chemical supplement or a chemical that's experimental, and it turns out that I don't want to say it gives you superpowers, but it may greatly increase your brain power, the amount of the brain that you're using, or make you especially stronger, something of that nature. And usually these things they're not exactly over the counter, and you're probably not even going to be able to get a prescription for them because most of the time in the movies, they are not on the market yet. They are completely experimental. Drug company has come up with them. And so they really don't know 100% what the side effects are. If you were offered something like that from what was otherwise at least a fairly reputable drug company, but we didn't know what the side effects were, would you go ahead and take it and try it to see how much better you could be? This question is going to go to Mark Sims.
No, I'm old enough that I'd probably mess something up if I took some drug not knowing these side effects. I'm not that adventurous. I suppose I'm just too tenacious in wanting to maintain somewhat of a stable, hopefully healthy life. I remember as a child reading, it was a baseball tell-all book by a pitcher named Jim Bouton. It was called Ball 4, and he was telling about his baseball career, not just the activities on the field, but a lot of off-the-field activities. A pretty off-color book at the time, talking about players womanizing and et cetera, et cetera. And he had an interesting take on baseball players back then were prone to take some types of performance enhancing drugs. Sometimes it was uppers, and I think they called them greenies. And Bouton said that probably a lot of pitchers, if they could take some pill that would guarantee them to win 20 games a year, which is a very high standard of achievement, but it would take a few years off their life, they might well do it. So in some hyper-competitive environments, maybe, but that's not me. Mr. Table Topics Master.
All right. Thank you, Mark. For what's worth, if anybody is interested in a movie such as that, one of the more recent ones is entitled Lucy, L-U-C-Y, starring Scarlett Johansson. The enhancing drug was called CPH4, and it was administered to her with force, basically. Well, force. She had a choice of either dying or taking the drug because they were doing the drug deal and they made her test it to make sure that it was legitimate and not poison. And she was just wired and amazing for the entire rest of the movie. So if you're interested in a sci-fi movie along that nature, that would be one to look at. If you want to look for one that's with slightly older people, look for the movie Cocoon. Cocoon is a sci-fi movie where there's a swimming pool that had been put together by aliens, or they had actually put their pods in the swimming pool. And the elderly people that were in it were suddenly rejuvenated as long as they kept swimming in the pool. Wilford Brimley was in it, and the biggest quote I still remember is, "We won't ever grow old, we won't ever die." So that's another interesting one for personal growth and enhancement in a sci-fi genre. I think that's going to stop my questions for tonight. I can go over all of them, but before I do, let me do a call for our timers report and then the word of the day. So let's start with our timer. How did we do, Lee?
I don't have my exact time. I know that you said that I qualified.
About 1:13.
Okay. Our second speaker, which was Tanya, was 1 minute 40 seconds. Our third speaker, Kim, was 2 minutes and 8 seconds. And our final speaker for this evening, Mark Sims, was 1 minute and 29 seconds. So all table topics participants qualified on time.
All right, great. How did we do? How did all of our respondents do on word of the day tonight?
Yes, all of our table topics contestants used the word of the day. They were tenacious about it.
Excellent day. All right, let me go over all of the people then, because every one of the 4 is eligible for the virtual ribbon. We need virtual ribbons. I'll have to work on that. Our first table topics respondent was Lee King, who answered the questions about training the trainer and basically giving feedback to make a trainer grow even better. Second question was Tanya. That was the $6 million, which again, 6 million is probably a little shy of what it'll take these days. Everything's gone up. But the $6 million woman. Third question was Kim Crandall. That was the question about using skills or losing them and how often you have to repractice them in order to keep them current and retain them. And finally, Mark Sims' question on if there was a pill or drug that allowed you to be a better, stronger, more intelligent human, would you risk taking it if it were off market? Give everybody just a moment to send all of those votes. And of course, those votes will go to, looking here real quick, vote counter, Lee King.
Lee King.
Yeah, Lee King. Yeah, somebody also mentioned Limitless. That's yet another one. Limitless with Bradley Cooper. That's probably even, that may be even more recent than Lucy, come to think about it. All right, having given everybody a little bit of time, it sounded like Dagan was willing to yield his minutes. And so we can go directly to our general evaluator, which will be John Vessels. John.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to do the journal evaluation portion of the meeting. And what we do in Toastmasters is we speak and then we evaluate ourselves so that we can critique ourselves and find out what we did and how we can improve ourselves. So tonight I want to start with the evaluations of the meeting, of the speakers. And let's start with Tanya Howard. She is evaluating Rob Giles. Tanya, can you give me your evaluation, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Rob, your speech, what just happened? I believe that I shared that you were going to use some software in your presentation, and you did. PowerPoint, that counts. And also looking at the other objectives, including the objectives that we give in our speeches, that is clear and that you're demonstrating why you're utilizing that presentation. I'll want to begin with that. I believe that you do an excellent job with your hand gestures. You're a great model for the rest of us because you're very expressive and you use your hand gestures throughout your speaking. And so I think you do a great job of modeling that, how to incorporate hand gestures even in this virtual environment. it really seemed like a topic that you were passionate about and very enthusiastic. And I think your introduction was very strong. You really brought the rest of us in because we could easily make a connection because you were talking about an experience that all of us has had, our first icebreaker speech, and really feeling powerful and positive about the feedback that we received in return during that experience. Another thing that I thought you did very well was with your presentation, the slides very much did enhance your presentation. They were organized, very clean. The PowerPoints were clean, and it did a good job of really showing the points that you were trying to make. You had some specific examples, and I also liked how you were able to connect with not just Toastmasters, but also personal experiences. And so you held that out throughout the speech and really kept helping us to see specifically how the power of recognition plays out, not just here in Toastmaster, but also in real life. So that was great. One of the things that I would say that you can continue to work on is, of course, your timing. And I think specifically that I think you were aware of the time because I felt like there was an abrupt end to the PowerPoint presentation. And I was wondering, was that because you were worried about the time? Because it didn't seem to have a closure. And I would wanted to see, well, what's my next step? What's my challenge? Or is there a summary or closure to the visual that could connect to what you were telling us? And so I think you had a very strong beginning and you incorporated your PowerPoint. And then I would have liked to have seen a strong conclusion that wrapped up with your PowerPoint ending in a way for us to know that that was the end of the PowerPoint as well. So thank you for sharing and keep up the great work. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate that. Yeah, it took me a second to get off mute. Now, our next evaluator for the evening is Karen Lee, and Karen Lee is evaluating Mark Sim's speech tonight. So, Karen, can you share your speech with us or your evaluation with us?
Yes, Mr. General Evaluator and fellow Toastmasters, and especially Mark. Mark, you were very tenacious about engaging with your audience. And your speech was well organized and structured, and your speech clarity was very clear. And I could easily understand you. And you also had a great sense of humor in the examples that you gave. And you may want to work on, I saw some parallels between your speech and the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So you may think about making this an international speech to motivate other people to do the same thing. Another thing to challenge yourself, I didn't notice any gestures. So you may want to think about that when you're using the Zoom platform. So those are some of the things that I thought would be helpful in your speech. So thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Karen. Now I'd like to go to the timer and ask, did both of my evaluators qualify on time?
Our first evaluator, Tanya Howard, qualified at 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Unfortunately, our second evaluator for this evening, Karen Lee, disqualified at 1 minute, 14 seconds.
All right, thank you, Lee. Now we go on to the general, sorry. There won't need to be a vote tonight because Tanya qualified and Karen didn't, but if you would take a moment and send comments to Karen and Tanya on how you thought they did with their evaluations. Okay? Excuse me. Now I'd like to move on to our general evaluation portion of the meeting. And then I'm going to go in with our duty holders. let's start with, first off, the topic, very relevant to our time and very something that I think we're needing to face, even my work as reaching out to people and dealing with the depression and all the stress and everything that's going on with our COVID and isolation and everything else that's going on. And it's been quite a while for us now. It's been months that we've been on our own in a lot of ways. And so I think it's time that people are starting to wear out and stress and get stressed more about it can just continuing to happen and not seeing an end. So the Grow Yourself is a good subject for us because it actually pulls us out of somewhat just getting stagnant to ourselves and not doing anything and sitting around the house and going, what am I going to do with myself? How can I take this anymore? And you also gave some good points about reaching out to people, because I haven't heard any studies or anything. I don't know if there's been an increase in suicides or anything, but I know there's an increase of depression and stress. And Schroeder's shaking his head. So there has been an increase in suicides since COVID took over. I mean, I know I've heard about some, but I didn't see any real numbers to say it's gotten bad. But good subject matter, good theme for our meeting tonight. And I thought, did you write to your speech after you found out what Dagan's topic was? No, just a coincidence that they worked out together. Your presentation tonight was right on the same line of Grow Yourself and the power of recognition and getting us all out of the funk that we're in because of COVID. I mean, it hits on me too. I work from home all the time now. The only time I get out is shopping on the weekends and going to doctor's appointments, unfortunately. But there's not a lot going on, and it's getting old, and it's getting boring, and it's getting tiresome. So everybody find something to get yourself occupied, get something different. If you've been doing the same thing for the last 4 or 5 months, find something different. Make a change in your life. Just change your pace, something to cheer you up or just get you going again. That's why I come to Toastmasters, so we can all see each other and talk and carry on and have a good time, and also learn ourselves and expand our own horizons. So all in all, good meeting tonight. Good table topics get worked out just fine. I'd like to also give my grammarian's report. Since I'm the one talking, I might as well do me first. Grammarian's report, just a couple of good words. I mean, everybody's language was pretty good tonight. I didn't hear any major egregious uses except for Dagan. No. The one thing I heard from you that I wanted to mention, you told us at the very beginning of the speech of the presentation that the theme of the meeting was Grow Yourself. Well, was is past tense. It is Grow Yourself. We didn't talk about it tomorrow and say, well, it was Grow Yourself. So present tense, please. Good, interesting words tonight. Minutia. Mark Sims said minutia, and I actually looked it up. I've heard it a million times, and I thought I knew what it was, but I wanted to make sure. I didn't spell it right, but luckily the internet spells for you and says, so did you mean? But yeah, minutia, the little picky details that get us. So I think that's a really good word. Rob, accolades. You said it a couple of times. I like that word. It's just different. It's offbeat, not one of your mainstream things. So I like accolades. That's another thing that can come up. And these 2 words we can start incorporating into our life. Use them a little more, expand your vocabulary, include, be tenacious about it. Try and slip that word in there. And every time somebody says, did you get an award? Oh, I got an accolade. Yeah, but anyway, let's work on that too. Just something else that you can do to try and get yourself going during COVID. So let's do the other duty holders. Our other duty holders tonight were Rob Giles. You did posture bell. Will you give us your report as posture monitor, please, sir?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator. Going from the start of the meeting throughout, let's see here, Dagan, our duty holders all clean. I didn't notice any posture that was bad. Dagan, you had mentioned when you were saying that you were a reserved person, you brought your hands closer to your body. So that was a good use of a gesture in that regard. Karen, when you were giving the intro for Mark's speech, you kind of were slumped a little bit and you had your hand on your neck during that period. I tried digging you, but at that point I realized that I was on mute. So it was a kind of a failure in that regard, but that was something that you were doing. So kind of keep an eye on that in future meetings. Mark Sims, I believe just when you started your speech, I think you adjusted your glasses. So something to think about that. You did have some good gestures throughout when you were talking about being stern. I think it was your boss. You used your finger and pointed in that regard. So that enhanced what you were saying. For the most part, your hands, I think you were trying to do gestures or you were doing gestures, but they were pretty much below the screen. So a little difficult to see what you might have been doing, bad or good. You did do a pinky swear. You said pinky swear, and you actually put the pinkies together. So that was very good. You also had some facial expressions. And I don't know if this was when you're talking about being stern, but you kind of had your brows furrowed a little bit. I think when you were talking about maybe going through a difficult time or a difficult situation. So you had some good gestures, and facial expressions really can add to that as well. In our table topics, Lee, when you were up during table topics, I noticed, I don't know if it was somebody right in front of you that walked by, and maybe that was a cat, I don't know. Or if it was just somebody casting a shadow as they walked by, but
It was a cat's tail.
we lost you for a second there. So maybe you need to teach that cat a little bit more of our Toastmaster protocols and mannerisms. But other than that, you did great. Tanya, you had some good gestures during your table topics. You talked about carpal tunnel and you held your hands up. You showed your wrists. You talked about psychosomatic and you put your hands up to your head. You talked about tennis and you had an example of swinging a racket, also weightlifting. So you said it has some really good gestures during your table topics. As far as, let's see, as far as the evaluation, Tanya, that you gave to myself, you mentioned my hand gestures and you had your hands up when you were doing that. So that was a good way to enhance that. Karen, you pointed out that Mark could have used hand gestures and you suggested that maybe he move them up a little higher. So that was a very good suggestion, I thought. And that is it. So back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Rob. Our last duty holder that's going to have to give a report tonight, more or less, is Dagan. Dagan, he's our counter tonight. And Dagan, would you give us your counters report, please, sir?
What did you forget? Almost forget my name or what?
No, I didn't forget your name. I was on there. Something else was going on in my head. Anyway.
Well, before I do my report, I want to recap what someone Rob said a while ago about Lee and what he saw his shadow back there. And between Lee's cats and Tanya's kid Zoom bombing, it's been a pretty good meeting. But as for crush words, things like that, everybody did a pretty good job, except I noticed myself using several so's throughout the meeting. So, well, there I go again. I don't know about the you knows. I'm really bad at you knows, but I can't recall me saying "y," but I probably did. So I probably had a few you knows and then several so's. Oh, John said 5, so that's good.
There was a lot of you knows tonight.
All right, well, yeah, everybody did a pretty good job. So that's my report. And back to you, General Evaluator.
All right, thank you, Dagan. Okay, who's guilty with the piano riff? Somewhere in there I heard piano keys go off. Okay, nobody gonna take credit. I thought, okay,
I
we
think
saw
it,
Lee's.
I think it was on my keyboard, but I don't have any clue how it happened.
Oh, okay. But I mean, I saw the cat's tail, and that's immediately what I thought it was. And I thought maybe his cat's walking over the piano and stuff. Because I mean, there were just a few like, key things going on.
Yeah, I was watching
Anyway.
at the time. I was watching who was off mute just to see if I could tell. There were most people were still on mute. There's only 2 or 3
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah, and I'm disappointed in you, Mark Schroeder. You didn't ask me the question about growing myself. I'm the one with all the new body parts. I mean, come on.
Good point. You are already starting to be being rebuilt. That's true.
I know. Anyway, it would have been too easy for me. We already know I've got stuff. Now, all in all, I thought we did have a great meeting tonight, and I'd like to call now on a vote for the big three. Now, the big three are our Toastmaster tonight, which is Dagan Newland, or our Table Topics Master, which is Mark Schroeder, or myself as General Evaluator. So if you would take a moment, send a private message to Lee, who is our vote counter, and he is going to tabulate those votes, and he'll give us a report here in a little bit. Now, I'm ready to move on to the business portion of our meeting and turn the stage over to Mark Sims as our president. Go ahead, Mr. Sims.
Thank you, John. For our starters, next week is the club contest. And Rob, you had noted that you would attempt to be a guest speaker and see if you could recruit one. How did that work out?
I never received any response, and I reached out to multiple people, so I never got anything back from anybody. So it's something we need to think about. I don't know if anybody in our club is up to giving a speech that we can evaluate, but that would be a good idea.
Okay, and I never heard back from Mary Gomez either, our area director. Okay.
You could also just put something out on Facebook and probably get a response back as well on the D50 website that we're looking for a guest speaker.
Okay.
You know what else we could do, just for grins? See if we can find a short TED Talk and then evaluate it.
Well, you say that, but if nothing else, we could certainly go out to the web, to YouTube. There are enough other Toastmaster speeches that we could pull one of those.
Yeah, that would be cool too. I mean, just a speaker, and that just be something interesting, somebody we completely don't know and still have a speech to evaluate. Because they're not, just don't pick one of the
Yeah, don't pick a world
man
champion.
of the years. Yeah, don't pick a world champion. They're kind of hard to pick apart.
The other thing, if we were to do that, we would need to test and make sure that a video will play correctly for people, because we've done slides, but we haven't actually shared a screen with video to prove that it works with sound in a timely fashion and that it doesn't break up.
Well, we can try it at the meeting if you want to stick around.
Yeah, we can test it pretty quick to find out.
Okay. And we have 2 evaluator contestants, Lee and Rob. Would you gentlemen be okay with if we could bring in a clip of a speaker?
I'd be okay with it, but I would want to push the contest back a week. I think that would be something new that, since we're on Zoom, I think it would be good if we could practice.
I would say let's go the route of Lee, what Lee said about reaching out on the District 50 Toastmasters Facebook page, and I'm happy to do that to get somebody for real, in our Zoom meeting, a live person, so to speak. And then from there, if push comes to shove, then I'm okay with doing the pre-recorded video. I would prefer not to do that, But if we, if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. Equal footing for all of our evaluators, so that's fine. I don't necessarily think that pushing the date off for a week is going to do anything, change anything, but that's my opinion.
No, the only reason why I was saying push the thing back is if we're going to practice trying to put a video into the Zoom meeting.
He's going to do it tonight.
I think we can test that sufficiently. If we can keep just a few people around for about 5 minutes, we can tell whether or not it was going to work tonight, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, we can test that capacity tonight then, and then make a decision based on that. Okay. And let's see. Dagon, our dues due.
Dues are due. I guess we start paying now, but they don't have to be officially paid till by the end of next month. But
Okay.
I can send out a thing. But of course, if we want to go by that total that I sent you out, which would be, based on our current membership, $60. Is that what we're agree on?
I don't think we ever reached a consensus on that. Are you saying 60 for everything, including the Toastmasters International?
Yes, the international dues plus. Sorry, I have my video off. Yeah, $60. That's international plus what it costs to cover, the cost of the Zoom and the website and those things. That's that's not including the cost of Ozonas. We're keeping the cost of Ozonas out. So just the physical cost of Toastmaster dues, the Zoom fee, and the website fees, things like that.
But then that kind of leave us out of going back to Ozonas before March. I mean, if
I would agree. I would agree with John there.
because we won't have any money.
Kind of. But unless you want to vote saying that we're willing to, once we go back to Ozonas, that we can prorate, and you have to, I can charge everybody that much more money later on. It's either that or just go ahead and charge the full $90 right now.
I have a suggestion, and that would be to perhaps split it in half and say, we're going to anticipate for half of those 6 months to be at Ozonas. I think that might be a safe, we might plus or minus 1 month, which I don't think is a big deal, but that I think that we'd be probably safe with doing that way if everybody agreed to it.
Yeah, I think so. Realistically, we're not coming back in September. The earliest we'd go back is October. So that would be October, November, and then January, and then dues would be due again. So the absolute most would be 3 months, but maybe not even that, depending on what happens with the pandemic.
Well, then it's only an extra $30, so we just say extra, then split that in half as extra 15, so that makes it 170. I mean, that's 135. It makes it $75.
No, that we can definitely try that. Do I hear a consensus on that?
That's fine. And if anybody wants to pay the full
That's
$90, if anybody wants to pay the full $90, they can let me know by email.
Okay.
You don't have to tell everybody what you want to pay.
Okay, thank you. That's a good middle of the road approach, and I think we have some cushion already, and we can see how that works. Okay, thank you. And at this point, before we hear the winners, does anyone have any other business to bring up? In that case, Lee, would you please tell us who the winners are?
Yes, and actually, I just realized that we are in September, so dues are actually due at the end of this month. Hard to believe we're already in September. But at any rate, our winners for this evening, the best table topic presenter is Tanya, and the best of the big three for this evening is Megan.
Yay.
Thank you. In that case, the formal meeting can be adjourned and several of us will stay around and see if the importing a speech works.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Tanya.
Alright.
Good-
Have a good evening.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I don't know.
Tanya.
I don't know why I was thinking it's the end of next month. For some reason, I was thinking it's still August. It's like,
Almost, really close.
I hate August. I'm glad it's over with.
All right, we're gonna stop the recording in 3, 2.